Ghost Story in China, Part 3, written by Zhao88. Remember Myra, my seer friend who ended up as my roommate for 6 months after she moved to my dormitory? I was lucky or unlucky to get a boyfriend from her former university, the UIBE, now ex-boyfriend though. Because of the relationship, I used to commute back and forth from his school to mine, spending like a week at his place, and then stayed home for a week, and the cycle repeated. His dormitory was a 6-story building with no elevator and looked old. UIBE is an old university enough. Ghosts lurking everywhere at the place, from the old, crappy classrooms to the small dormitory rooms with yellowish light and dirty walls. Let's inspect the place from the gate. The complex had 4 gates, north, east, south, west. The dormitory was close to the west gate, so I usually passed it on to my way. To reach the dormitory, I had to walk past a big building, mostly used by the English division students. After that, I had to turn right and walk past the cafeteria, a parking lot for bicycles surrounded by willow trees, and then turn left and arrive. That day, I came at 3 a.m., and I wish you guys do not ask me why I came at such an hour. It was kind of unusual for us. In the middle of the night, at autumn, the wind was kind of strong, making a very uncomfortable swooshing sound. The dry leaves were fluttering around me, and the moon shined dimly, partly covered by dark clouds. The situation was eerie enough that I walked as fast as I could. When I walked past the class building, I noticed that some of the lights were on at some higher floors, but what made me shiver was when I saw a silhouette of a small child peering from one of the windows. I nearly ran away from the scene and arrived breathless at the door. What was a child doing in the middle of the night? Later, the janitor told me that the lights would turn on and off by themselves, and at night, sometimes sounds of children laughing and running could be heard by unlucky students who trapped at the building, studying until night, preparing for the exam next day. I already mentioned I had to pass the bicycle parking lot surrounded by willow trees to get to the dorm. And once I went out to 7-Eleven for some late night snacks with my ex's roommate, who could see spirits. Also, many Indonesians can do that. When we passed the place on our way home, I heard a woman's voice crying. It was so sad yet eerie, the kind of cry that made you shiver in terror. I didn't see a thing, and luckily hearing crying, but poor Sandy, the roommate, saw a woman in white sitting on a tree and crying with her face covered by her long black bangs. On the stairs from the 4th floor to the 5th floor emitted some dark feelings to whoever unlucky enough to pass it at night. The light was never on, even though it changed multiple times. It couldn't light. Nobody knew why. The mechanic man was called again and again, yet he was never able to find out why or figure out what was the problem. There, on a corner of the stairs, sat a man, and I could never guess what age he was, because he was sitting with his head between his legs, like someone who was desperate enough he didn't want to face the world, and I would never pass the stairs without some company. At the room 503 stayed a handsome ghost who liked to keep his home clean and tidy. The inhabitants of the room, 2 Indonesian girls named Evie and Betty, were sort of untidy, not to mention, as a girl, had a lot of things ranging from clothing stuffs to kitchen utensils. Whenever the room got messy, things started missing from their place. You might think it's a normal thing to lose in such a messy room, but once Betty was looking for her room key, we literally rummaged the whole place, but no key in sight. Betty was emptying her bag to see if the key was stuck somewhere inside, but it wasn't there. After making a big mess out of the room, we decided to tidy everything and clean it up. To ease up our annoyance, we were supposed to eat outside, but with no key, Betty was forced to stay at home until she got a spare key. After it was clean and tidy, Betty took her wallet and stuffed it in her bag, which was emptied earlier, only for her fingers to feel her key inside. It was nonsense. We emptied the bag, we groped it all over, and no key, but we found it easily enough now. That incident wouldn't be so meaningful if it hadn't only happened once, but it happened 4 times. Since the last accident, Betty and Evie learned enough to keep their room clean and neat. One other incident happened to me which made us sure about the fact I was sleeping on Evie's bed one night. While Evie was out and Betty was sleeping on her bed. At night, sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night, and it could happen several times. I was a light sleeper. I woke up that night because I felt a soft wind blowing, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a figure of a man standing near the window. I pulled myself on my elbows to get a better look, and he turned his head on me. He was quite handsome, wearing a checkerboard patterned shirt and smiling. I wasn't afraid, not in the least. Why should I? He was smiling warmly at me and handsome. So I smiled back and whispered, "Sorry, we messed your room." So I smiled back and whispered, "Sorry, we messed your room so often. We won't do it again." He disappeared after smiling some more, and then I went back to sleep. That was the most tranquil ghost I've ever met. And there are some other petty ghosts too. 2 black shadows were lurking on the west gate, just above the willow trees in front of it. A woman ghost on the 6th floor. And a story said 2 years before I came, that was 2007, a Korean girl was walking home alone from a nightclub. Some workers who were building an artificial lake inside the complex saw her and raped her. Out of desperation, she committed suicide. There was a Russian guy too who committed suicide, but of a broken heart, and apparently he was cheated by his girlfriend. So, if you guys like the story, look for part 4.